Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our next edition of Next Level Refs. My name's Greenie, and I'm joined tonight by fellow Next Level Refs founder, Chris Beath. Welcome, Beathy.
Hello, Mr. Green. Thank you for moderating this session.
That's all right. Pleasure to do it. So for everyone tonight, we're going to do something a little bit different. So Beathy's kindly volunteered to put himself in the hot seat tonight and answer a few of your questions. So earlier today, we put out the call on the socials for Ask Beathy Anything You Like, and had a pretty good response so far, Beathy. There's some good questions that are going to come your way very shortly. So we will try to get to as many as we can. We're going to make it pretty short, sharp, rapid fire stuff. So we'll see how we go. But yeah, so you're feeling nervous, Beathy? There's some pretty interesting questions coming in.
Mate, I like how you said I volunteered to begin with. I don't know if there was much volunteering involved, but we can roll with that. That's fine. But yeah, you're right. There have been some good questions rolling through. I saw a few of them before I deliberately checked out. So you can hit me with any that came through, some nice curly ones. But you're right. It's good to have a session like this because we mentioned at the beginning of Next Level Refs that we're going to have varied content from instructional to guests, experts in to these live Q&A sessions. So let's give it a go.
Good stuff. All right. Well, let's get stuck straight into it, eh? So first question that came through. So they want to know, what was the very first game, or what was your very first game like as a referee?
Yeah, that's a nice one. A nice easy one to start with. So
nice,
my first
easy
game,
to start.
Yeah, right. Very first game was down at a local club here in the south side of Brizzy at Capalaba, which just by chance I was at last night watching another young referee. But that game was an under-12s match. It was my field test, and I went out there with an old school pea whistle, like a metal pea whistle that had a little cork inside. Yeah,
Brilliant.
With a lanyard that was about a metre long. So I was feeling pretty cool for that first game. But yeah, that was the first one. And I remember back in the day, there was the ref instructor that was blowing the whistle at the same time. So bit of a unique experience. It's not the done thing nowadays, but that was the very first one.
Yeah, no, good stuff. So you're out there on your own, but you had someone actually running beside you as you were going, telling you where to go.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay.
Yeah, excellent. Not so much where to go and what to do, but certainly if I'd missed a blatant foul, I'd hear a whistle like from the sideline, and then I'd echo that whistle as well.
Excellent. Good stuff. Good way to start.
Yeah. You're right.
Next question comes that came in. So did you ever feel nervous or unsure when you were first starting out, and how did you get through that?
Yeah, a really good question. And the answer is way beyond just starting out. I think I felt nervous before every game I did. I think the nerves got a little bit less as the years went on, but certainly felt nervous every single time I walked out on the pitch. And I learned that was a good thing in time. And I eventually got used to it. And I knew that if I wasn't feeling nervous, that was a bad thing. So I think coming through the ranks, I got past those nerves by a bit of advice that came through, which was to try and get rid of all the nerves with that very first blow of the whistle. So kickoff, just blow all the nerves out and then move on to the game. So that got me through the first few years, I think. I was feeling nervous. I just gave that whistle a real strong blow to get going. But then as I moved through the ranks, as I moved to the next level, my kind of coping mechanisms became a little bit better. And I used to almost enjoy when the nerves would kick in. And that's when I'd put some music on and I knew that I was getting ready for game time.
Yeah, no, it's a good point actually, and I was quite similar, and I think you're right. I think once the nerves sort of disappeared, I think that was probably a telling sign that something might be a little bit off, because
for sure.
I think, yeah, as you said, having the nerves I think is good, and I think professional players even say that.
Yeah, absolutely
as well. But the nerves kick in as well for them. So no, that's really good. And just a reminder to people, if you want to throw any questions in the chat while we're going as well, feel free, and we'll see if we can get to those as well. So next one, how old were you when you first started refereeing?
Yeah, I was 15 when I first started. So a course came up at school and you had to be 15 to do it. I think I just snuck in. And yeah, that was kind of a young time to be refereeing as I reflect on it. I had lots going on. I was playing at the same time. But yeah, I was like at that very borderline. As soon as I could start refereeing, that's when I got involved in it.
Yeah, brilliant. And that kind of ties into to this next question we've got. So somebody's asked what made you decide, and I think we've touched on this in previous sessions, the four of us at one time or another. But what made you decide to, I guess, continue on that path of being a referee rather than a player?
Mm, yeah, so I juggled both for 2 years. I was still playing as a junior, so I played for a decade and was refereeing. And honestly, I just started enjoying refereeing a lot more. I could see a bit of a career path with refereeing, and I think my skill level might have maxed out as a player as well. So, as a very short goalkeeper trying to make it into men's football, that was kind of a recipe for disaster anyway. But I still enjoyed playing, but I was just enjoying refereeing so much more. I found that really like challenging each week, and as it turned out, it took me all over the world as I look back on it. But yeah, I did both for a little bit, and ultimately just started enjoying the side with the whistle more than the side with the ball at my feet.
That's that's a really diplomatic and nice way of saying you're a rubbish player. I'm
I was
reading
a rubbish
from
player.
that
No,
answer.
no, I
Yeah,
cannot get away from that. I love the game and I love playing the game, but I was never going to be a Socceroo, maybe even not even a state player. So yeah, right decision to keep going with the
brilliant.
whistle.
I was going to say like most of us, I'd imagine.
I was going to say pot kettle here. I've seen you kick a ball, Greedy.
I'm not too bad. Left foot goal last week, so but we'll talk about that later time.
Yeah,
So
right.
the next question. So what did you do to improve your performance early on in your career?
Yeah, another really good question. So I was lucky enough to have quite a few games filmed. So even though it wasn't at like A League level, there were lots of cameras around. So reflecting on the game afterwards, and I know most like NPL games and even the levels down from NPL are streamed and recorded. So that is a great tool to like reflect on what worked well, what didn't work well, and being able to like review incidents is just brilliant. I think before that, though, even before games started being recorded, getting feedback from more experienced referees was incredibly valuable. So being able to bounce off guys and girls that were doing it incredibly well in Briz and getting their thoughts on what worked well, what didn't work so well, and what I could do differently next time. And then a bit of, not that it was formalized when I was coming through, but a bit of self reflection as well. So recognizing in myself what was working well, what wasn't working so well. And then probably the other thing that I really enjoyed doing was just watching other officials in other sports as well, particularly the ones that are mic'd up. So listening to the NRL, listening to rugby union, even AFL when they've got their mics on. So hearing how they interact with players, how they just communicate was pretty valuable, and being able to trial in my games what worked well, what didn't work well, that sort of stuff. So there's a few ideas in there of what worked for me, but I know even going through the ranks, a lot of it is trial and error. So going out there and just trying something, that someone might have said, and if it works, great. If not, well then no real harm done, and you move on to the next idea to try and get better. But I think just talking to as many people as possible.
Yeah, I think that, and that's a really good point. A lot, and I agree with what you said around, the trying things, and I think
Mm,
particularly when you're coming through those ranks early on, it's a great opportunity to try those things because ultimately there's not too much you can break really, at the
sure.
lower levels, particularly in the junior levels. So
Mm, mm.
great time to just have a crack, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely,
No, that's
and
that's that's
especially
really good, mate. Really good.
yeah. I was gonna say, especially when you're finding your feet too, eventually, like I'm talking about the real junior end there, eventually I know for me, I was able to fall into the guidance of some excellent mentors in Bris. We've spoken about them in the past as well, but they're like absolutely crucial with my development. So eventually you find the people that you can rely on, get honest feedback from, and go to for advice, confide in good games, bad games, in different games. And that is probably the number one thing that helped me get through the ranks as you start getting a bit of traction in the sport.
Yeah, and I like the way you spoke about your self-reflection too. And I know that's quite prevalent these days, particularly at the higher levels with
Absolutely.
match officials, probably in all sports. But I certainly think once you can start recognizing yourself around your own performance and accepting, that sometimes you will make mistakes and you can learn from those mistakes and you move on. I think, once you can do that, I think that certainly helps with your progression as well, particularly when you're starting out.
For sure.
Good stuff. All right. So next question. Question came through. So what should I focus on most if I want to move up to higher levels of refereeing?
Oh, that's a tricky one. Focus on most. I think the things that come to mind are controlling the controllables. So things that you can control are things like your fitness. I think the things you can control are your knowledge of the laws of the game. The things you can control are living and breathing football. So understanding the game tactically, technically, understanding what football expects is really important. And then aside from that, then it becomes a little bit personal. So I think the couple of conversations I've had with young refs in Brisbane recently have been around the work they do off the ball. So how they manage players off the ball can be really crucial in moving through the ranks as a referee. The ability to communicate well and influence player behavior in a positive way is really, really important. So I think that's a really good skill to be able to work on. And that really does show as you move through the ranks, the ones that are able to communicate and manage the game well. So they might not get every single free kick right, but they're able to manage the game particularly well. And I know I'm preaching to the converted here, Greenie, that was like your mantra, but being able to manage the game well and ensure a really good outcome while protecting player safety and ensuring like an entertaining game of football. But that can often be the difference between a really good referee and an excellent referee is just how they manage the overall game, not necessarily if they got that free kick on halfway right, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, and you're spot on. And I know, how many times we've spoken about, you can get through games and I'm sure everyone will experience it from one time or another where you'll get through games where you can make plenty of mistakes, but because you've got the players on side and you're managing the players and the game as a whole, then, you can get away with some of these things. Whereas There'll be other games where you can make you can have a fantastic game for 89 minutes and you'll make one mistake or get one little thing wrong and it can all go really pear-shaped. So yeah, that's
absolutely, mate.
That's a great answer, mate. Yeah, brilliant. So next one. So this is a good one. So what do you do as a referee when players or coaches are yelling at you?
Ooh, yeah, that's a good one. And that genuinely happens at all levels. So I think coaches yell at park football, junior football on the weekend, senior football certainly in my area in Bris here, and they were certainly yelling at me at some of the big international tournaments as well. I think I learned to respond to those coaches when it started to impact match control and when it crossed the line around like what was acceptable. And I'm talking about dissent there. So where it's maybe just out of frustration and throwing your hands in the air, I'm probably more inclined just to let that be as opposed to creating more confrontation. But if they cross the line, then obviously we need to take action there. How do I handle that? I think being kind of mentally aware that it's likely to happen. So it's not the head in the sand approach of, gee, I hope it doesn't happen today. It's more, this could happen and this is how I'm going to deal with it. And that comes into pre-match. So my team that I worked with regularly around the world were really good at identifying when technical areas were going too far, when they were crossing the line and when action needed to be taken. But I think there's a real skill in identifying when to intervene or when to get involved with the technical area and when not to, because often I see refs getting involved with the technical area when at times it may not be justified, and others that maybe let a little bit too much go. So it is a fine balance. For me personally, my main mantra around that was I would act when it impacted match control or when it was just behavior that was totally unacceptable. So that's how I dealt with it. What was your take on it, Greenie?
Yeah, mate, that's a really good answer, I think. And you're right. It's a hard thing, particularly for young referees too that are coming through early on. You know, if you're, like you said, you were 15 when you started. If you've got a 45-year-old bloke who's coaching the under 12s, you know, giving you a hard time on a Saturday morning, that can be quite challenging for a young person. But no, I really like that you touched on. You know, and it was something that I was conscious of too as a match official, was that, you know, always responding to players. So don't leave things hanging. You know, if they're asking you questions, you know, and yeah, they'll get frustrated from time to time, but I always found that responding to them, even if they didn't like the answer, at least giving them an answer was often better than just ignoring it and letting it build up and build up and build up. And then all of a sudden you've got some real problems to deal with. So sometimes just a quick answer can be enough just to you know, alleviate some of that pressure from the players and even the coaches. Sometimes even just a signal. I found, I don't know about you, but sometimes you know they're yelling out, "Hey Greenie, what about that? It was a free kick," and you might just go, "No, hey, no." Something like that is enough sometimes. Like, okay, you've seen it, don't agree, but okay, move on. So yeah, no, really good, mate, really good. So next question, here's a good one. Did you ever want to quit being a referee, and what kept you going?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure you would have had plenty of times when you thought about it.
Yeah, correct. It's a tough sport that we get involved in. So yeah, I can distinctly remember a couple of times, more so coming through the ranks in junior and senior football, where games didn't go my way for whatever reason. And I remember being at a state titles and a decision that haunted me for a little while, and I just had to get away from the game. I took a couple of weeks off and really wanted to make sure that when I came back, I was going to be ready. In hindsight, the advice I give nowadays is getting straight back on the horse, and that's what I did when I learnt a little bit. But yeah, there were definitely times in my career where I thought, oh gosh, I'm not sure if this is going to be for me, or if all the sacrifices are going to be worth it. Thankfully, that's usually the mindset straight after an event, whether it's a decision, a confrontation, some media publicity, whatever it is, it usually fades pretty quickly. So the one thing I learned with a bit of experience as well is when then those feelings of, oh, I don't know if this is for me, come into my head, I usually try and just give it a day or two. And I find that those feelings are nowhere near as strong. And as it turned out, they eventually went away anyway. But yeah, I think there wouldn't be many referees that would go through their career and say that they didn't think about doing something else, going fishing or surfing instead at some stage of their career.
Yeah, 100%. And as you said, it's always, you know, it's always half as bad the next morning as it was the previous night when you were going through it. So I think that's good advice. You know, if you need to take a couple of days and get away, then so be it. And yeah, we've all been there, mate. 100%. All right, so let's here's some good questions. Now we get into the real interesting stuff. So so somebody's asked us what it was like, and I'm interested now. What was it like walking out for the first match you did at the World Cup?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's a good one. So what it was like, it was a pretty awesome experience. And I think that in the change room, we had like a really good vibe in the change room, that we all felt pretty calm and somewhat confident in what we were about to do. That said, my nerves were racing as I was in the tunnel and as I walked out on the pitch. I know as soon as I crossed that white line and walked out onto the pitch, I took a big, deep breath, and that kind of grounded me a little bit, centered me a little bit, and I kind of felt just ready. I really felt ready for the game, and I knew that we'd done the hard work to get there, and that we kind of earned our spot, maybe over and over, we'd earned our spot and that we deserved to be there. So it was a pretty awesome experience and one that was 2 decades in the making. So yeah, what was it like? The nerves were racing, was super pumped, and honestly, I just couldn't wait to hit that whistle and get it going. I felt like the intro before the game, where we go through all the procedures with national anthems and so on, that felt like it went for quite some time, and I was just itching to blow that whistle and get it going. So it was an interesting experience and one that I'll never forget.
Yeah, no, absolutely, mate. Yeah, and yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, the build up to those types of games can seem like, or even when you're doing grand finals or any sort of those
Mm-hmm.
international matches, that seems like can go on for it can be half an hour by the time you've walked out
Right?
the sheds till you blow the whistle, and that's the
Yeah.
only thing you want to do is just blow that whistle and and,
Let's
and
get
start
going.
running around. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
brilliant.
'Cause that's a good thing for nerves as well. As soon as you start like moving around, you're physically moving. You've got something else to focus
Yeah,
on. Mm.
absolutely, absolutely. So that kind of ties into another question we got. So, we've been asked, what's the best match you've ever refereed?
Best match. So the 3 matches that come to mind. One is the World Cup match, Poland Mexico. That was pretty awesome.
Of
The other
course.
one was the Olympics final. That was just a match that I gave my all to, and in fact walked off afterwards and just almost collapsed in the change room. I had absolutely nothing left, so that was a pretty cool experience. And the other one was a friendly of all things, which was Brazil Argentina at the MCG here in Australia, which was pretty awesome. The MCG is a pretty special place at the best of times. It was a full house, and between those two pretty special football nations, it was an awesome experience as well. So they're the 3 that
I was
come to
going to
mind, but there's
say,
stacks of others in there as well.
yeah, I can imagine, mate. And some friendly in inverted commas
Right?
that would have been Argentina, Brazil. I'm not too sure there's many friendly outings between those two, but
Yeah, right. Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, I remember watching your gold medal match when you did it actually at the Olympics, and
Mm.
that was a tough match.
Oh, it was.
As you look like that game had a lot in it, and you needed to concentrate and be on your game
For
for that
sure.
at 90 plus whatever it was, because
Absolutely.
that, that they didn't stop going at each other for, and rightly so, what
Yeah.
was on the line. So
Correct, mate. And then
yeah,
throw in
no,
some
that's
really, really like oppressive conditions in the heat as well. So it was mentally challenging with the game of football, but then physically
mm,
challenging with the heat in Tokyo. So it had it all. I
yeah.
was ready for a little rest afterwards, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure, for
Mm.
sure. So kind of on a similar line then,
Mm.
you've refereed over 200 games in the A League. So domestically
Hmm.
now, we'll talk domestically.
Hmm.
So during that time, obviously that was over a number of years,
Hmm.
probably a decade or so, at that level. So who were some of the players that you really enjoyed whistling when you're out on the park? Big name players or just really good players. Who did
Yeah,
you
yeah.
really enjoy whistling?
Look, that's a good one, because I was very fortunate to have quite a few games in the A League. The one that comes to mind straight away is Del Piero. Like, we were pretty fortunate to have him in our A League for a little while, so he was awesome. Other names that were great to officiate, the likes of Shinji Ono, throw in Thomas Broich, Best Barisha. So those guys were pretty special talents to have in our league. But then other guys that were just really good to referee are the likes of Alex Wilkinson from Sydney, just a really nice guy, really good leader as well. So, yeah, they're the ones that come to mind straight away without putting any thought to it. I'm sure I've just offended a bunch without naming them, but they're the ones that come to mind straight away.
Yeah, no, that's a pretty good group of players.
Mm.
So then that brings me to probably a more trickier part of this question now is, so
You're
if
going to
they
ask
were
me the
the
flip side,
ones that
aren't
you enjoyed whistling,
you?
yeah. On the flip side, who were the ones that you had the most challenges with over that
Yeah,
time?
that's a
There's
good
probably more
one.
of those that come to front of mind a lot quicker, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely, and often for different reasons too. So, the one player that comes to mind straight away, and everyone um, remember different aspects of his games is Kevin Muscat. He was always a challenge to officiate. Like off the pitch, a super lovely guy, and he's a great manager. He's doing awesome things overseas, but on the pitch during his playing days, he was pretty challenging. He was always talking. He was always trying to influence decision making, and then on top of that, he could also put in a fairly serious challenge from time to time. And there's a few well-known cases there as well. And he wasn't alone. There were others that could put it in a pretty full-on challenge, like sort of Charlie Miller comes to mind, even Craig Moore, who was a fantastic player that could put in a pretty crunching tackle as well. And then there were others that were challenging from a management perspective. Jacob Burns, I'm going back a few years now as well, was very vocal. So he was always fun to officiate. So there's a few names there. I think even the ones that I've named, though, there was always a good relationship with, good rapport with, and a good amount of respect between all of those names. And there are plenty more, but it shows that it's not just the ones that put in really hard tackles that can be challenging. It can be challenging just from a communication perspective, like an interaction perspective, almost a manipulation or influencing behavior perspective. There's all sorts of ways that players can be challenging from a referee's perspective. And I know you've probably reffed a few of those names as well, Greenie.
Yeah, that was as you're running through that list. Yeah, it was bringing back some really great memories actually. Yeah, of plenty of nightmares during games,
Sure.
trying to manage some of those personalities. Absolutely, but
Yeah.
so just to finish off this little topic, then let's round it out with the coaches. So which
Sure.
ones were the hardest to deal with during a match?
Yeah.
Which ones were were good to deal with?
Sure. A lot of challenging ones. There has been quite a few challenging A-League coaches over the years. I'll just go one on each because I know we're conscious of time. When I was coming through the ranks, challenging, I probably found Graham Arnold a bit challenging when he was coaching domestic football. And on the flip side, the one coach that comes to mind that wasn't a challenge because he was focused on his team and not on us in any shape or form was Ange Postecoglou, who was just a brilliant coach down under and has proven that overseas time and time again as well.
Yeah, no, mate, I can't agree with you on the Graham Arnold one because he was a pleasure to deal with as far as I was concerned. But,
well, that's good.
But I will agree with you on the Ange one. Yeah, it was always it was never much of an issue. Although I would say that when Ange, if he was blowing up at you during a match, it was probably a fair indication that you had made a mistake. Because he only generally did something like that if you really did do something.
You knew about
that was
it.
probably not
for
right.
Sure.
Yeah. So yeah. No, that's great, mate. Look, I think that brings us to the end of the session. So certainly appreciate you sitting in that hot seat, mate, and taking those rapid fire questions. Apologies to those
questions
people.
In there.
Yeah, apologies to those people we couldn't get to. There was a bunch there that we might have to save for next time. So you might have to go round two, maybe in a couple of months or something like that. But
yeah, sure.
But no, appreciate you doing that, mate. Thanks.
No, pleasure, mate. And thank you for moderating it as well. It would have been a little bit lonely if I was just here answering questions that came in on the socials and on emails. So thanks for firing those at me and for not giving me any notice on some of those other ones. So, look forward to returning the favour at some point in the future.
No, all good. And look, thanks everyone for joining us again. Stay tuned. We got a really cool session next week, particularly those of you that enjoy being an AR as well as refereeing, perhaps. So stay tuned, and we'll see you next weekend or next week.
Awesome. Thanks, Greenie. See you, mate.
Thanks, guys. See ya.